Hello, everybody, and welcome to SAMA, Sisters Against Mental Abuse. And today I have my good friend Kayla on the line. Thank you for meeting me so short notice, Kayla.
Oh, it's not a problem.
So
I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. This has been a long time coming. I asked you like a month or two ago, and our schedules have just been really opposite of each other. So thank you for doing this last minute. I kind of just want to know a little bit about you first, like kind of introduce yourself. I wasn't sure if you were working on any projects or anything that you wanted the listeners to be aware of or anything.
Okay. That's not a problem. My name is Kayla. I'm from Georgia. I do have my own podcast called Concrete Souls. I'm trying to start working on that a little bit more often, but it's basically about my childhood and trauma, things of that nature. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
Yeah, and I mean, when I listened to your podcast, I was taken back into my own childhood. Like it was very like spot on. And I think us growing up in Black families, there's certain types of trauma that it's just there and it's commonplace. And we don't realize that these things are traumatic or abusive or not okay because it's the norm. And so listening to your podcast, Concrete Souls, kind of pulled me back into that. But to start, what was your childhood like?
So my childhood was very abusive. Um, Growing up, there was like different types of abuse. It wasn't it wasn't um basically the regular type of childhood, mom and dad in the family. My mom was always in prison, my dad was always in prison, and I stayed with my grandmother in a foster home majority of my childhood. So that's basically the basis of my childhood. It was very abusive, it was very aggressive, and I thought that this was the norm majority of the time, but it really wasn't.
So your parents were both in and out of prison. And so did you have to live with different family members? What happened at that point?
Yeah, so I did have to live with different family members. So one of them being my grandmother, and one of them being my aunt that passed away. She was amazing, and she passed away actually a couple of years ago. But I stayed with her for about 2 years, and I stayed with my grandmother off and on, and also I stayed in the foster home for about 3 years. So it was basically all of us had to be skipped around to different places, foster homes, different family members at one point. I think I even stayed with my cousins for a couple of months because we were homeless. There were times like that. There were times where we had to live in motels. There were times where we just lived with my uncles. Like it was a lot of times where we didn't have a home. When I lived with my mom and dad were out of jail.
Okay. So what were your earliest memories? Like your earliest memories, were they positive? Were they negative? What kinds of things do you remember? Like as far back as you can remember, what do you remember from your childhood?
Um, I do remember, like, from the earliest parts of my childhood was probably when I lived with my mom, and we lived on my grandma's property at that point in time. And it was more negative than positive because my mom and my dad, they always fought. And that's one of my earliest memories is living there in one of on her property, and they were arguing, fuss and fight to the point where my grandmother had to kick them off the property. And that's probably one of my earliest memories. So when it comes to living with my mom and my dad, one of the ones that always sticks out to me is when we were living in a two-bedroom house, and my we all shared one room. So it was seven of us, and we all shared one room, and so it was kind of chaotic. But I remember it was my dad used to do a lot of mental abuse things where he used to like try to humiliate us or do things to humiliate us, like um there was times where he just did, I couldn't really say it like in words, but he would basically tease us in a manner it would make a child cry or things of that nature. And there was this one time that it was like kind of physical abuse, and it really tore me up because it was a time where my little sister basically, she was little. They said she got like a cut on her head or something like that, and they just basically blamed me. And I didn't even do anything at the time. And I told them I didn't do anything. I didn't touch her. And so what happened was they beat me and they put me in a laundry room. And the laundry room had nails coming out of the walls, and they made me spend the night in that laundry room, and it was absolutely terrible. So there was things like that that really affected me into adulthood, and then I didn't even know it until I got older. But that's specifically what it was. When it comes to my other family members, like my aunt that I live with and my cousins, there was no abuse, fortunately, and there was no abuse living in the foster home as well.
I want to go to something that you've spoken about on your podcast because it's very emotional and it was very moving when I listened to it. One of the things that you talked about is something that I think happens in a lot of Black households, and that was being you getting a whooping over something so small. And I remember there was
Mhm,
a story that you talked about. Could you share some of those
mhm.
instances?
Uh-huh. I could definitely do that. So when I was a child, and this is like when I lived with my grandmother, there was a lot of abuse with my grandmother too as well. And I didn't know until I got like older, probably within this last maybe 1 or 2 years. There was instances, so say if I, accidentally spilled a cup of juice, so or just anything, like just as I was very clumsy as a child and I'm still clumsy as an adult. And I used to spill things, and it was not my fault. I just used to spill it. And my grandmother would literally whip me if I spilled something. If I knocked something over by accident, I would get a whooping. If I would just any of those things of that nature, but specifically spilling things or accidentally like breaking things or just anything like that, I would definitely 100% get a whooping for it. So even if I tried to clean it up and hurry up and clean it up fast, if she knew that floor was sticky, I would definitely get a whooping for that. Any of my siblings would get a whooping for that. And that was specifically one of the things that I would definitely get a whooping for is spilling things or accidentally turning something over. Um, my grandmother was very strict, very abusive in her words. Especially she did a lot of mental abuse too as well. Where she said a lot of things, and I'm sorry to get off a little bit of track here, but she said a lot of things that really hurt me into adulthood, and I didn't know why I was like that. But I had some behavioral issues growing up, and my grandmother always used to tell me that I would be 16 and pregnant, and she used to always tell me that I would be crazy, and if I had a baby, I would kill the child. There's things like that that she would say to me all the time. Or even when I was going to start getting my driver's license, which I had to teach myself how to drive, she told me that I would kill somebody on the road because I'm too crazy and I should not be driving. She used to tell me that she laughed one time when I told her that I tried to kill myself. I literally tried to kill myself at the age of 15, at the age of 11, and the age of 10, as early as that. And she told me, she laughed when I told her that I tried to kill myself. I walked onto ongoing traffic on a busy highway. And my friend was there and he pulled me out of the traffic. And um, I tried to kill myself. And she literally laughed. She said, "Oh no, what somebody would have saw you," or something like that. And she said, "This is crazy." And then around that time, I had so much stuff going on, and it was a lot. She was abusive like that. She was very abusive like that. But I'm sorry to get off a track like that. But those are some of the things that I had to endure as a child that were that were definitely abusive mentally and physically.
No, you didn't go off topic. That's kind of what the purpose of this is. Like, you sharing these experiences will hopefully make another Black woman, like, see that some behavior is not okay, or maybe they're treating their kids like this. And, by hearing you talk about your actual experiences, maybe they'll realize that that's not okay, because it is damaging. And so I do have a question. So your grandmother, is that your mother's mother?
Yes, that is correct.
So then would it be safe to say that maybe this is something that your mother, I don't know, not got from her mother, but maybe it was behavior that she learned from her mother? Did it make you think of your mother when your grandmother was verbally abusive to you?
In a sense, but my mother, she's more of a narcissist. Um, my mom didn't. I don't know what happened, but my mom didn't wasn't all. She never acted the way she acted as a mom. She was neglectful, like she neglected us. That's for sure. But she never acted the way she's starting to act like my grandmother now. I'm more seeing that now because my I feel like my grandmother's a narcissist as well. But because they don't like to be wrong at all. So that I'm starting to see her behaviors now as she's getting older, and I see it now in her because they're acting the same. They don't want to take accountability for the things that they've done. They don't want. They feel like they have to put this mask on for other people to basically trick people to believe that they're like these great, honest, nice people when they're not. They're actually abusive. My mom started being more abusive actually around I remember the year, it was 2014, but I'm starting to see her behaviors of my grandmother now. But my mom was she neglected us, but she was never a narcissist, and she became a narcissist later on in life.
Okay, and when you say because I try to avoid using the narcissist word, I really try. I try so hard not to use that word a lot, but I want to ask what what in particular makes you use that word when it comes to your mother? I mean, because we all know that narcissists are like very two-faced, like you said. They have a
Mhm,
mask,
mhm,
they are devoid of empathy.
mhm,
The biggest thing for me is that they're two completely different people, and once that mask slips, they they let everything hang out, and it's quite ugly. So, what kind of
mhm.
situations make you feel that your mother is a narcissist?
Okay, so one being is there's a lot of situations. Let's just say this, but when I used to invite my friends over, she would put this mask on to make her seem like she's just like awesome, nice person. She's done like stuff in the community to make sure that this nice person. She owns a business here where I live, and she tries to like pretend like she's this awesome, great person. But the thing about it is there's a lot of stuff that she's doing now that makes me feel like she's a narcissist. She lets her mask flip with us, and all of us all of us is seven of us, and we all believe that she's a narcissist because the way she doesn't take accountability for her actions, the way she brushes off our feelings, the way she's never apologized for all the things that she's done to us in the past, and she refuses to do that because we're quote unquote grown, um, and we should quote get over it. She doesn't want to take accountability and responsibility for that. She basically throws us out when she doesn't. She feels like we don't have a need for like she doesn't have a need for us. I got thrown out during the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like it was for no reason. She just doesn't care. She will throw you out on the street and don't care if you survive or not. She has a lot of lack of empathy and sympathy, but at the same time, this is the biggest thing. Narcissists want you to believe that you need them, and that's one of the biggest. I've been looking into it. I've been reading into it. I said, what is my mother? What is she? Like, she's not the same person that I grew up with. She's not the same person. She started gaining this attitude like she's better than everybody else, and she started gaining this attitude where she's always constantly bragging and talking about herself. And I was trying to figure out, I said, what is she? She's not the mother that I knew when I was a child. And I started researching and looking things up. And this was before, the narcissist thing that, people say now that everybody's a narcissist and et cetera, et cetera. But she literally is one. Like, I can't make this up. Like, I really wish I could like make this up, but she is a narcissist that doesn't know that she's a narcissist. And there's people that know that they have the disease, but she literally has it. Um, but that was the main thing, is the fact that she would walk around like she's better than everybody else, and then when she goes and talk to random people on the street, it's like, oh well, I'm just gonna be this nice person. I'm gonna be this awesome person, but she will be nicer to them than she is to us. And she basically always feels like she'll always come running back and like, oh well, you need me. I'm your mother. After she's cursed me out, called me nothing, all of these things, throw my things on the street, drag me by my hair, and throw me out. And then she said, you need me.
Wait a minute, dragged you by your hair?
Yes, my mother has dragged, and I have a witness to that. My mother dragged me by the hair outside and told me to get out. And this was around when I was like 18. And another thing, there's another situation. I'm going to let you know this now. I know I'm kind of getting off topic here, but it's about abuse. My mother, it was one time, it was back in 2014, 2015, I believe. And my mother, we was driving home from my grandmother's house, uh, towards downtown Savannah, going back home. And I got in kind of not even an argument, just a disagreement with my mother about my little sister sleeping in my bed, because she would pee in my bed, and I just didn't want her to sleep in my bed because she peed in my bed all the time. So I was like, I don't want her sleeping in my bed because she pees in my bed, and she can sleep, she can, sleep outside not outside, but on the sofa instead, or we could put something down on the bed. And that's all I said. So what happened was, she reached back, she poured a slushy on me, and she got my stepfather to drag me out the car and told me to not come back home. And she left me in the middle of the hood in Savannah, and she left me there. And I did not know what to do. And I was alone, and I was scared, and I was outside alone. And I happened to be found a guy, just a random guy. He was a nice guy. And I told him I didn't know where I was. And I told him I didn't know where to go. And so I reached out to one of my ex's cousin. And me and her were always friends. And I think she lived not too far, but it was like maybe 3 or 4 miles away. And I walked 3 or 4 miles to get to her house, and he walked me all the way there. The guy walked me all the way there and didn't ask for anything. And he was so sweet, and he walked me there, and I got there safely. But there was things like that. And then shortly after that, my father passed away. So I was homeless, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit emotional. I was homeless, and my dad passed away, and I was alone. And so that's the things that my mother did to me as an adult, actually as an 18-year-old. And those are things that happened just a few years ago. So there was things like that she did that really messed me up. That was like physical abuse later down the line.
I am so sorry about your dad. And I mean, all of this, it sounds like you really struggle, and it sounds like she created a dependency, but then when you're dependent on her, it's like, what are you doing? You're grown. Which is indeed abusive. I want to know more about the impact on you, like, because it's important to illustrate this, where people start to hear the impact that mental abuse has on people growing up, kids, even young adults. And so far, we've talked about your grandmother and her being verbally abusive, your mom, who has been physically, it sounds like verbally and emotionally abusive to you. What has been the impact? Because now you're older, and it sounds like
Mhm.
from when we talk, it sounds like you're very much enlightened and you're very aware of what's going on. So what impact has all of this stuff had on you as an adult?
It's had a gigantic impact on me as an adult. Um, when you go back and you look at all of the things that happened to you, you have dreams about it, and you realize you're out of that toxic situation. And like I was telling you, I live alone now. So I live by myself, and when you're taken out of that toxic situation, you don't have to go back to that. You go and sit, and I've been reading books. I've been reading this book about abandonment issues, and how I can't even get through all of the book because I cry, because of all of the stuff that's being said in there. It's absolutely me, 100% me. I've been having to take medications, and also I'm going back to therapy soon as well. So there's a lot of stuff that it has an impact on you, and when you physically or mentally abuse your child, you are basically setting them up for something in their adulthood that they're not prepared for. They don't know. A lot of people don't know until they're out of that toxic situation. And I've been living on my own for 2 years now. Um, and so it's been enlightening, about the situations. Like it's very. I sit and think about it now because I never had the chance to sit and think about all the things that happened to me as a child because I was always around those people. And so if I ever told them about it, they were like, "Well, you're just over exaggerating or anything like that." But when you sit and think about all the things that's happened to you, it affects you tremendously. It affects you tremendously. It keeps you from building relationships with people. It keeps you from building friendships with people. Sometimes it keeps you in your bed and depressed and upset because why you? So that's how it was. It's very impactful, and that's why you'll need a lot of therapy. You'll need a lot of support. And so when you physically and mentally abuse your child, it might not affect them now, but it will definitely affect them later. And then a lot of Black moms wonder why, well, why none of my kids want to come take care of me in the nursing home. It's because you were so abusive. And why they sending you to a nursing home? Why they're not taking care of you? Why they don't care about you? It's simply because you didn't care about us when we were children and we needed you. And so it affects you. You start to not care about those people, and you start to handle those people with a long handled spoon.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned how people always tell us, "Hey, you're exaggerating, and we need to stop." Like we have to stop downplaying emotional abuse, period. Like mental abuse, period, coming from whoever. And I know with family, we always get roped into it because like what you said, your mom tells you, well, I'm your mother. We get forced to stay in these kind of family relationships despite however abusive they are, which means i, I want to ask you this next question. It brings me
Mhm.
to my next question. Do you still have relationships with your mother and your grandmother, and if so, have you set boundaries?
Okay. That's a great question. No, I do not have a relationship with them. My mother will try to reach out, by physically, like basically saying something like I'm crazy, I'm psychotic, or anything along those lines. She'll make text me from different numbers and things of that nature, trying to get my attention, trying to get a rise out of me. But I no longer need her so at all. I never did. But I don't have a relationship with my mother. I don't have a relationship with my grandmother. So I haven't talked to my grandmother since the summer of last year. And I talked to my mother, but it was regarding um, her my podcast. And so she wanted me to not have my podcast. She wanted me to stop it. And I told her no. I'm going to talk about the things that I want to talk about because I have the right to. So, I mean, I don't have a relationship with them. I plan not to have a relationship with them. And if we did, they would definitely have to apologize. But I know that's not going to happen. So there's that. It's a no.
Okay. So, how did you go about ending those relationships, like with your mother and your grandmother? Did you just stop talking, or was it something that you had to think about before you did it? How did you do it?
So it was a basically a series of events that happened during that time. It was more of my mother being abusive. My mother always tries to gain my grandmother's love because she hasn't. I mean, I don't know. They have our relationship, and I'll definitely get into that on my podcast about her. See, what happens is it's generational trauma, and so she passed it down to her, and that's what happened. But um, um, it's I try not to think about a lot of the things. I really don't because it's very traumatic. It's very traumatic. But I try to keep it to the side.
Okay, okay, I see. And then, so I don't know what your relationship looks like with the rest of your family. It
Hmm.
sounded like you had an aunt that you really loved, who
Hmm.
unfortunately passed away. Are there other family members that you love? And if so, if there's like a family event or something where your grandmother or your mother shows up, how do you handle that situation?
Okay. I do talk to my siblings. I talk to majority of my little sister and my older sister, and I talk to pretty much all my siblings. We were close as kids and we only had each other, so I feel the same way, even though we might get into arguments, and that's natural, that's brother and sister type things, but we always end up coming back to each other. We have this bond that's unbreakable, and especially my older sister. She's like my best friend in the entire world, and I love her with all my heart. And my little sister too as well. And my brothers, I talk to them, um, and we do have that relationship and that bond. As in far as like different family members, I do talk to my cousin that lives in North Carolina as well, and she's pretty cool, and I love her too. And my foster mom and my foster dad, and they always will have a place in my heart, and I go visit them from time to time. And when it comes to handling a situation at like a barbecue or something like that, a family event, what I do is I really just be cool. I play it cool because you don't want any type of drama or anything like that. It shows maturity. I don't have to be friends with you. There's been events in the past where I have not been cool with my mother, and I attended those events, and I acted cool as a cucumber because I do not want anything to happen on in my regards. Because my mom, what she'll do, she'll try to twist it on me, and even if she did something wrong. So I play it cool. I don't say anything. I don't say much. I'll say, hey, what's up? And then I'll go into talking to my other family members.
Okay, I see. So you'll still go to these events. It
Hmm.
sounds like you are not going to miss the opportunity to connect with the family members that you love, but it sounds like you have your own like boundaries when it comes to how far you're willing to go speaking with them if you see them. Is that right?
Yeah. There's not a lot of like it. I'm gonna be honest with you. There was a situation. My younger brother Bryant, um, he lives in South Carolina. He goes to college there, and he hasn't been with us for like lived down here for a while. He's in a foster home up there, and they're paying for his college and things of that nature. He hasn't been down here, I think, since 2014 or 15, to live permanently. So it was a situation where he doesn't like my mother. He doesn't like her. He doesn't want to deal with her. He really does not like my mother. Um, and they've tried to have relationships with each other. They've tried, and he's the type of person that's not gonna sugarcoat anything or be cool as a cucumber like myself. But there was a family event that happened at her house, and at that time I was cool with my mother, and I ended up bringing my other little brother there, and he ended up my little brother Bryant, the one that lives in South Carolina, doesn't like my mother. He ends up coming, and my mother tries to basically uh instigate a situation. Like she tried to instigate a situation, trying to get a rise out of him. And he was trying to play it chill, trying to play it cool. He said, "Hey, mom, what's up? Well, why you didn't do this or why you didn't do that? It doesn't matter right now. We're all at a family event." And I had to tell her that it doesn't matter. Um, and she tried to get a rise out of him. And a few days later, we ended up having a good time. A few days later, my little brother wanted to go see Hannah, and that's my little sister. And he wanted to go and see her, and she was at my mother's house, spending the night, and she refused to let him see her, to let him come over and hang out, and said that he was disrespectful and all of these things, and just being disrespectful to him. And then it ended up in a gigantic argument, and we were all supposed to go bowling, and it ended up in a chaotic argument that was huge, and we ended up not going bowling. We ended up not spending time with each other, and it was because of her, because she didn't want him to see her. If she was like, she's not cool as a cucumber like I am. I'll just let it happen. But she's like, oh no, he's not gonna come in here and do all this and not speak to me and this, that, and third. When it doesn't matter right now. We're just trying to spend time as a family. That's it. We got end up having a good time. But there's times like that where in a situation with family, everybody handles stuff differently. But most of my siblings, like maybe all of my siblings, we don't like our mother. We don't like her.
Okay. So at least you have some support when it comes to that. You don't have other people that are close, like you don't have your other siblings saying, "Oh no, you're wrong." So at least you have like confirmation and support. So that's a really good thing as well. So I'm going to ask one last question, and that question is, what kind of advice would you give to other Black women or girls that are in abusive family settings, whether they're younger or they're adults and they feel obligated to still connect with these family members, or whatever the case? What advice do you have?
The advice that I have is, if you're in an abusive situation with your parents or any type of situation like that, I would advise you to try to get your stuff together, try to save your money, and try to find a better place to live. Try to have supportive friends, um, and other family members. Try to get grasp to those other family members that are supportive to you, because those are the people who are going to be your support system you're going to hang on to. But that's the advice that I would give them. If they're still in that abusive situation, try your best to get out of it. Um, Sometimes people end up homeless, and it happens, and I ended up homeless. But your best bet is to try to get away from those people as soon as possible. Um, Definitely as soon as possible. Try to find some good people that you could be around. Um, Friends, family, like different friends, different family. But that's all I can really recommend. And noticing those patterns when they're trying to be abusive to you. That's what I had to do. I knew my mom's patterns, and so I knew she was going to kick me out soon, because she has a time limit. And if you have a parent like that, you definitely have to watch their patterns and try not to get as upset, because if you don't, that will make them even more mad. Like that will actually make them mad if you just play it chill and play it cool. But that's the advice that I can definitely give them.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm glad we finally did this. Thank you for coming on, Kayla. Anything else that you want to leave us with before we close out?
Nothing. It was just great to be here. Really, it was just great to talk to you about these situations, and for younger girls. Also, like I said, just if you want to hear more about my stories, you can tune into my podcast, Concrete Souls. It is on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Music, all of those platforms.
All right. And that concludes our episode for today. Thank you for joining us. If you are a Black woman who has a story to share about mental abuse, whether with family, romantic partner, friendship, or you are a Black woman in the mental health field, please reach out to us, samatogethernow@gmail.com. We are on Facebook as Sisters Against Mental Abuse, and we are also on Instagram at samatogethernow. Thank you for joining us, and remember, mental abuse is abuse.